Will Young Griff or Aegon VI's invasion succeed, and will he become king? And what then in the Winds of Winter? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. On this channel we cover A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, and much more. If you love in-depth discussion of great fantasy and science fiction, welcome. Young Griff, the boy claiming to be Aegon VI Targaryen, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and rightful heir to the Iron Throne, has launched an invasion of Westeros with the Golden Company, right at the end of A Dance with Dragons. It's early days, but it seems to be going well so far. So, will he succeed? Will he become king? Well, let's start with what we already know. So far, his army is basically just the Golden Company, although that is good in and of itself. They are the finest and largest sellsword company in Essos, 10,000 men, including 500 knights, 1,000 bowmen, and 24 elephants. And they have allies that they are hoping will rally to the cause. We looked last time at their claims to have friends in the Reach, and concluded that these friends are probably a handful of powerful but not top-tier houses, like Peake, Tarly, Florent, and maybe even Rowan. They will also surely have a few similar friends in the Stormlands, though for various reasons they are unlikely to be able to field many soldiers. And most importantly, they expect House Martell to join them. We'll look at Doran Martell's full plan at some other point, but it's fair to say that the Martells hate the Lannisters for what they did to Elia and her children, and have long relied on strong marriage alliances with the Targaryens to bolster their position, as far back as Diran II, as well as, of course, Doran's sister Elia marrying Rhaegar. Since the fall of the Targaryens, Arianne Martell was secretly engaged to Viserys, Quentyn Martell was sent to Meereen with a view to marrying Dany, and now Arianne has been sent to the Stormlands to investigate the alleged Aegon VI. We know how impulsive, proud and keen for power Arianne is, and willing to seduce men for her own advantage, so what seems likely to happen when she meets the powerful, attractive and charming young Griff? And how will Doran react when he receives back from Meereen the bones of his beloved Quentyn, together with a note from Sir Barristan explaining that Dany's dragons killed Quentyn? Dany herself is now married to someone else, and has actually now disappeared as well. It's pretty clear which Targaryen Doran will want to back, and it won't be Dany. And as far as we can tell, this will seem like a sensible move, because the invasion is progressing well. It didn't start off particularly well. The Golden Company's fleet was scattered by a storm just past Lys. The Volantene ships they used put to land where they could, rather than all at the designated landing spot of Cape Wrath in the Stormlands. Still, when they do land, they make swift progress. The main force that does land at Cape Wrath is split into four, with Jon Connington leading one of the quarters to retake his ancestral home of Griffin's Roost, and two others claiming Crow's Rest and Rain House, respectively. The other scattered members of the Golden Company seemingly attack and take wherever they have landed, Mistwood and parts of the Rainwood, and some islands, Estamont, Tarth and some of the Stepstones. It gives them a small toehold in Westeros, but a toehold nonetheless. And given that most of the soldiers of the Stormlands were either killed in the Battle of the Blackwater Bay or taken north by Stannis, and what is left is likely to be against the Lannisters, or maybe even know Jon Connington personally, the welcome they receive seems less than hostile, and at times amicable. Their misinformation strategy also seems to have bought them a little time. Jon Connington announced his return by letter to various places, though most people think he's dead, and the lack of Targaryen banners has disguised their true intention and loyalty. The result is that the small council may agree on the need to do something, but there is debate about who they are fighting and what they want, not single-minded focus on a threat to the throne itself. The next step, though, is to claim Storm's End, and they seem to have a strategy for that, too, Jon Connington asserting that he intends to take it by guile. And take it they do, at least judging from the pre-released chapters of The Winds of Winter, which are obviously not fully canon yet, but the closest we will get for now. Added to which, with Storm's End falling to them and various lords rallying to the cause, there is also a reasonable chance that Aegon might still gain more symbols of legitimacy. The sword Blackfire, for example, the sword of Targaryen kings. I did a whole other video on that if you're wondering how he might get that into his possession, but long story short, I suspect that Illyrio has it. And perhaps Aegon might start appointing more members to his Kingsguard. He already has Sir Rolly Duckfield, a personal pick, but we know that Jon Connington has in mind that the honour might best be held in reserve for warriors of greater renown, whose fealty would add lustre to their cause, and the younger sons of great lords whose support they would need in the coming struggle. There are plenty of names that fit this bill, including Sir Gerald Dane, Darkstar, with the sword Dawn, perhaps, who would put people in mind of Sir Arthur Dane wielding the same sword. Then there's Richard Lonmouth, Rhaegar's former squire, if, as I suspect, he still lives, and Sir Donald Swan, brother of the current Kingsguarder Balon Swan. There's already a bit of foreshadowing about him switching sides once more. All in all, a strong start, you might think, with the potential for even more to come. But the real prize is King's Landing itself, and that is ripe for the taking. Indeed, it's hard to imagine a set of circumstances in which King's Landing is more open to falling. The last chapter we have in A Dance with Dragons sees Kevan Lannister, who had been doing a solid job in managing the tensions in the city, murdered by Varys, who is Team Young Griff. In doing so, he deliberately frames, well, everyone, as he explains to Kevan, "Your niece will think the Tyrells had you murdered, mayhaps with the connivance of the imp. The Tyrells will suspect her. Someone somewhere will find a way to blame the Dornishman." This leaves Cersei in charge. Not the most stable pair of hands imaginable. And it also leaves Varys free to cause more mayhem. And don't forget that there are 2 sand snakes on the way, determined to kill Lannisters. And the other issues are stacking up. The Crown is deeply in debt to the Iron Bank, who seem to have thrown their weight behind Stannis now. There are local troubles with House Rosby, and the Faith of the Seven is flexing its muscles under the High Sparrow, including through the forthcoming trials for Margaery and Cersei. Oh, and food is barely getting into King's Landing. The small folk are struggling. The historical parallels here abound. Cersei is often seen as being reminiscent of Mad King Aerys II, under whose rulership King's Landing fell, of course, but I wonder whether she might also have echoes of Rhaenyra in The Dance of the Dragons, with the people rioting against her as they starve and are taxed punitively. The idea of a noble young king-in-waiting at Storm's End also has parallels. That's where Jaehaerys I held out, while the Lords of the Realm fled from supporting Maegor the Cruel to him. Varys sums up a lot of what he hopes will happen in his little speech to the dying Kevan. "Doubt, division, and mistrust will eat the very ground beneath your boy king, whilst Aegon raises his banner above Storm's End and the Lords of the Realm gather round him." Probably most crucially of all, Cersei will be in charge at King's Landing, and she will want to deal with both the Tyrells, who she will think killed Kevan, and the Faith of the Seven, who imprisoned her. Perhaps her revenge won't be exactly like what happened on the show, with the blowing up of the Great Sept, destroying the Tyrells, the High Sparrow, the lot of them, or perhaps it will be. Either way, Cersei will get her revenge, and the Tyrells, or what is left of them, will quit King's Landing seeking another king to back. If I had to guess, the rumours of an army heading down to Storm's End that we hear in the pre-release chapters of The Winds of Winter are not of Mace Tyrell marching to resume his siege, but to pay fealty to Aegon. Let's not pretend that the Tyrells don't have a track record of this. They were supportive of King Aerys II, then swore fealty to Robert Baratheon the usurper, then switched to Renly Baratheon, then after he was gone allied themselves with the Lannisters and the new King Joffrey. That's 3 times they've switched their allegiance in short succession. A 4th time wouldn't be a shock, particularly if Cersei does something rash, and she almost certainly will do something rash. And so I think we can expect to see Fagon marching on King's Landing maybe halfway into the Winds of Winter. Could the Lannisters dig in and successfully defend King's Landing? Possibly, although with Varys sowing the seeds of discord inside the walls of the Red Keep, the people potentially turning against Cersei if she does anything remotely like blowing up the Great Sept, and actually surprisingly few Lannister soldiers actually there. Kevan Lannister mentions there being hundreds of Lannister soldiers in the castle, compared to the tens of thousands there would be in a united Golden Company, Stormlands, Reach and Dornish army. A victory for Aegon seems likely in these circumstances. Very likely, in fact. Cersei and her loyalists will be forced to flee, probably back towards Casterly Rock in the first instance, which, as an aside, fits with George R. R. Martin's confirmation that we will see Casterly Rock in a POV chapter. As he said, "You know, the story takes over. The story makes its own demands. There are other parts of Westeros that you will see in the last few books. I mean, you've never seen Casterly Rock. You've never seen Highgarden. I think both of those locations will play key roles in the books to come." By far the most obvious POV character to visit there is Cersei. And then what for King's Landing? Well, Aegon will want to build up the accoutrements of power and stabilise his rule. Even if he holds King's Landing, he won't have won the war. The Lannisters will fight on, Stannis will still claim the throne, the Iron Islanders under Euron won't bend the knee and so on, and there will be inevitably questions about whether he actually is Aegon, so he will want to look as Targaryen-y as possible, to look like the rightful heir, and even if he has other priorities, his advisors will definitely want that. He will look Targaryen, claim Targaryen heritage, probably have the sword Blackfyre, and a Kingsguard that echoes old Targaryen Kingsguards, and now he will sit on the Iron Throne, and I'm sure be crowned with one of the many Targaryen crowns, and very probably by the High Septon. He will look every inch the Targaryen king. And I suspect that the people will love him. If he has support from the Reach, he will be able to get food back into the city, and he will probably be able to deliver a period of relative calm for the region. The immediate threats to the city will have gone, with Cersei retreating to the Westerlands, Stannis in the north, the Starks and their allies also focused up there, and Euron basing himself off the coast of the Reach for the time being. Dany is still months, if not years, away from launching her invasion. And we have some prophecy that also suggests he will be popular. One of the blizzard of visions that Dany received in the House of the Undying was that of a cloth dragon swayed on poles amidst a cheering crowd. Dany interprets this as a mummer's dragon, so a false dragon, which fits with our central theory that young Griff is actually technically a Blackfyre rather than a Targaryen. We'll come back to that point in a bit, but the idea of a cheering crowd suggests that he will be popular, which fits with what we know of him, taught to care about the small folk. So what is to stop him once he has the Iron Throne? Well, two things, possibly. The first is grayscale, or the Grey Plague. On the TV show, Jorah Mormont contracted grayscale in Essos and hid it from those around him before finally being healed by Sam. In the books, it is Jon Connington who has the affliction, and is keeping it secret. Grayscale is a mysterious, magical disease, and those who contract it are usually either killed or quarantined for their own safety and that of others. Its highly infectious cousin, the Grey Plague, can sweep through cities in weeks, killing thousands. We hear about it 3 times in the background to this story. In Old Town, then Pentos, then Yi Ti during a Feast for Crows. Are these just foreshadowing of an outbreak closer to home? Perhaps. An outbreak of the Grey Plague in King's Landing would kill thousands, perhaps even tens or hundreds of thousands. If the rumour gets out that it was caused by Aegon's invasion, that would certainly turn the people against him. The second thing in Aegon's way will, of course, be Daenerys. It's a subject for another video, but Dany's time in the Dothraki Sea will almost certainly change her. That's not me saying that, it's George R. R. Martin, but again, that's the topic of another video. She had been content to rule Meereen, but now, potentially with the Dothraki on her side, lots of new and old allies waiting for her in Meereen, Unsullied, the Second Sons, Mokoro, etc., and a lot of ships. Her own invasion will probably start soon. She will sail to the Seven Kingdoms to claim what she believes is hers by fire and blood. She will probably stop off a couple of times en route to deal with a few old grudges, the other cities of Slaver's Bay maybe, Volantis and so on, but her, the Dothraki, the Unsullied and her dragons will set off westwards and probably arrive around the end of the Winds of Winter. She will arrive to discover that there is already somebody in place in King's Landing who claims to be her nephew, but ahead of her in the Targaryen line of succession. I think she will be suspicious of this. One of the repeated exhortations from the House of the Undying was that she was the slayer of lies, and Quaithe will have made her wary of the mummer's dragon, that she needs to expose the lie. He is not a true Targaryen, and although I think we are still a long way away from knowing exactly how this will happen, I personally suspect that dragonfire will play a role, as it may in ending many plagues. Like the Great Fire of London in 1666 ended the Great Plague of 1665. So, although I am sure there will be diplomatic overtures, young Griff was definitely hoping that Dany would arrive with her dragons and join his side, and maybe even marry him, Daenerys doesn't seem likely to entertain much opposition to her sole rule. Still, around this time, I suspect that the threat from the others will start to become very real, even to those in King's Landing, and maybe Jon will appear. And Doran Martell, With the downfall of Aegon, if that happens, Doran's last plan will fall apart. The Martells' previous plotting and engagements with the Targaryens lost him his uncle, his sister, a niece and a nephew. And then his follow-up ended with the death of his son Quentyn, his brother Oberyn, probably several nieces and maybe even his daughter Arianne. I can't imagine him surviving that, psychologically, if not in actual terms. Young Griff will claim the throne, I feel confident about that, but he probably won't hold it. And when he falls, so will many others. The tragedy of Young Griff is that he probably would have been a good king, given time. He probably would have cared about the small folk and tried to rule justly, but this is not a story with a happy ending. The ending will be satisfying, but not necessarily the one we, or the people of King's Landing, want. If you'd like to see more of my videos about the Winds of Winter and A Song of Ice and Fire more broadly, please click on the link on the left of your screen. Or if you'd like to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.